Bill, your microphone's actually on.
Yeah, I can hear you guys too, and I've never been able to hear you guys in the intro before.
And now everyone else can too.
Everybody, you're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. We usually are mute when we have that intro going on, so it's going to be interesting when we do look back on this with YouTube to see if our chatter and singing is included, so that'll be interesting. I also wanted to say something. Somebody had commented that they listen to our show in the car, and that there are points where they do get a little bit lost. And I thought we've always done a pretty good job of, we're showing something, we describe what it is, because we know that there is an audio component. We know that there's a number of people that only receive this as an audio delivery. So I don't think it's been a problem, but we're just going to be a little more cognizant of that going forward. So thank you for pointing that out. Do appreciate that.
Definitely. So, we already have somebody joining us today. So, hey, John Runyon.
Hey, John Runyon.
Hey, buddy.
Comic Book Bears Assemble. Good to see you guys. Good to see you too, John.
And interesting he said assemble, because that may factor into something later.
He's good like that. Yeah, he just set us up. Appreciate that, bro.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's
foreshadowing.
How has everybody's week been? Because we took a week off, so we're doing the bi-weekly thing right now. So
going forward, too, yeah. I will let the people who had happier developments in their life go first.
So okay, yeah, I'll go first, and I'll tie this into some of my geek gets. I feel like that's a good way to kind of segue into that and tell you how my week was. So the week was fantastic, had a great week, and it was full. It was a week that we just did a lot of stuff between work and school, and Roger and I had some stuff scheduled to just enjoy each other's time. Not like that, you get your mind out of the gutter. But one of the things we did is we went to the theater. We went and saw Hamilton. Here in Little Rock, a traveling production, off-Broadway production of Hamilton is in town. It was wonderful. Tickets are sold out for the entirety of it, so if you didn't get them already, you're just out of luck. For an Arkansas kid who didn't grow up in the theater or with theater stuff around, probably the most professional setup I've ever seen. Incredibly cool and just immersive, and I really enjoyed it. My husband got us amazing seats because he's good like that. So, and he's over here, so I'm smiling at him. Second on the list, big fan of music. We've talked about this before. Love it. My favorite album of last year was Mastodon's Hushed and Grim. I got the LP of it finally. Haven't even cracked it open, but I need to. That's got to be a thing that happens soon so I can throw it on the turntable and enjoy it. If you like metal, if you like prog metal, it's amazing. Also, I had some stuff come in. I went on a little bit of a shopping spree because some of my scholarship money came in. And I think you guys know I'm a huge fan of Jeff Lemire's Black Hammer. So now I have all of the library hardcovers. So shelf porn galore.
So pretty.
Yeah, it's
gorgeous.
She's thick. I'm showing it to the guys. I've got both issues of the Black Hammer Library Edition, both omnibuses, and then I've got all three of the current World of Black Hammer omnibuses. They're in the hardcover. They're beautiful. The coloration on the spines are awesome. So if you can get your hands on those, I recommend doing so. And actually, I got them at a fairly decent price. I didn't pay more than like $40 or $50 per issue or per hardcover. I got them off Amazon. Yeah, I know, Legion of Evil, but got to do what you got to do. But
let's call it necessary evil.
Yeah.
I mean,
one, for the price those things were, and they've been on my little wish list. So incredibly happy. Going to throw these guys up back here. And then last but not least, I think those of you who know the show or who know me from the show and kind of follow me on social media know in December, my husband and I had to say goodbye to our baby, essentially. So we had an 18-year-old Boston Terrier that we had to help her over the Rainbow Bridge, and it broke her hearts because we're very much dog people. So we've waited a little bit. Something was missing. We wanted to fill a hole in our lives. And then lo and behold, one of the local shelters posted this little critter. And so we brought her home with us. And she is our Emmy. She's part Beagle. We're not sure what else she's mixed with, but she is about 3 years old, and she's getting along with the other fur kiddos just fine. She just got spayed, so she's a little, she's a little sleepy. she's stoned as shit is actually what's happening. So we're very happy to have her, and she does not realize how much she's already loved and how good of a life she's about to have. So everybody say hi to Emmy.
Hello, Emmy.
I totally like Roger was in the queue to name this dog because I got to name like the last one, like Banner. That's my big dog's name. And so he was thinking up names, and I happened to mention Emmy, and he was like, "Oh, that's cute. Let's name her that." Totally from Harrow County. Like I managed to sneak another comic book character in there. He changed the spelling though, so it's Emmie. Okay. Really, really excited. Love having her. She's a joy.
That's awesome.
I'd also like to thank Roger for the cameo of his arm.
Yeah, he's
Rob has done that too. I don't think we've had Jason yet. I don't think we've
seen Jason's arm. You would notice because of the tats. Because they're pretty cool. So,
he's got a handsome arm. I will say he's got Jason has a handsome arm.
He does. I think you've seen it in a couple pictures.
He does like elbow burlesque.
He does have he has pretty banging forearms. I mean.
Oh, you did well, sir.
Oh well, and welcome Emmy. Oh.
They've now vacated the premises. They've exited the studio. She's had her moment.
Well, I'm just gonna say I don't have any geek gets. But we also have a new family member that we brought home this past week, who also happens to be a beagle. I don't have her with me because she is still in puppy mode. So she's only a year old. She was found as a stray, pretty feral, and just about a month and a half ago. And we brought her home from the shelter, and all of a sudden, now we've got another joyful puppy who is, in with the rest of the pack. She and Mafanwi, our cat, are very funny together. Mafanwi's not sure how to take it. She's only about a year and a half old herself, and now she has something that also wants to play, but is much more aggressive than she is. So there's a lot of hissing and a lot of, sneaking to get sniffs and kisses. So it's very cute watching them interact. And she gets along well with Marlin, who is our 13 and a half year old, actually 13-year-old dachshund. So, except he spends most of his time sleeping and just doesn't want to put up with playing. So he just kind of snoozes and lets her run circles around him. So it's pretty cute. But yeah, her name is Minerva. And so now we have 3 M four-legged furry friends, Mafanwi the cat, Marlin the dachshund, and Minerva the beagle. So, yeah.
All right.
Named after Minerva from Harry Potter, Professor McGonagall.
Well, I don't have a new dog. I'm sorry to say, I wasn't going to adopt one just because you two did. Though it would have been cool. But just long story short, I've had pets in my life from the time I was, let me see, 6 or 7 years old to 48. And I'm kind of, I'm at that period where the goodbyes are too hard, and I don't have to tell you guys because you guys have gone through that recently.
Yeah.
But maybe if it's a situation like after I retire and there's no travel for work, or maybe something else will happen down the road. But as of right now, it's not happening. I'm such a bummer. All right, well, let me cheer up a little bit, just a tiny bit. Again, we are basically hunkered down right now. We all got snow, right? In the 2 weeks since we've been together. Yeah.
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 We got tons of rain over here, but
and rain. So And between that and Omicron, I've been kind of hunkered down. The only get that I got that does have some kind of cadence, which I enjoy. Um, you know, I've been getting the Spin Master figures from the DC universe, the Batman and the DC superhero series. Well, those lines are on hiatus right now because there is a Batman film. So I did get Spin Masters. The first figures have started to hit retail. So I got, as you'll see here, the Batman and the Penguin. So there is also a Selena Kyle that's not billed as Catwoman for some reason, and an armored Batman that's not much of a big line yet, but in the summer there's going to be more figures, and there's different sizes, and the Batmobiles that have come out have been really cool. So um, I'll be getting some uh, toys as the months go on. I was really looking forward to talking to you guys because I really had a lousy week. Um, Caleb, I admire you so much with everything that you've done in terms of getting in better shape. I've been trying to do that. Push-ups were a struggle for me yesterday.
Yeah.
I started work on the elliptical. There's a lot of things that were just very frustrating because uh, these are exercises that were never problems for me before. And I'm determined, and the muscles building up a little bit, that's happening, but I still have a long way to go, and it was just very frustrating. I also had an interaction yesterday which really brought me down, and encountered rudeness from someone I never expected it from. And something I talked to Steve about. I don't think I've mentioned this to you, Caleb, but if you know somebody that has had a loss in their life due to gun violence, be very careful about the language you use. That's all
Right.
I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. And it's been really. I've had to turn off the news a lot this week, just because there's so much of the celebration of the asshole.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
the one thing about Canada is, okay, it's not just us. You got these shitheads too. But I just had to turn off from that stuff. Yeah, the Winter Olympics is a bit of a distraction, but this is a better distraction as far as I'm concerned. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, I've been looking forward to it
And
all week.
I will not bum you out going forward for the rest of the night.
Yes. And
Well,
in fact,
no.
go on.
I was just gonna say, don't be bummed out about the exercise thing. Just keep in mind, a little progress is still progress, and you got to let it snowball. Like I started out doing like short exercises for 30 seconds, and now I'm doing those same exercises for a minute and a half and stuff like that. So just let it just let it snowball.
I know. It's just there are points where you just get frustrated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Trust me. And between the weather we've gotten this week and the fact that I did something stupid and hurt myself like yesterday, I haven't been able to work out all week, so I'm kind of just equally frustrated. But so I'm curious though. You mentioned the Batman. Do y'all have plans? And Bill, you were mentioning being kind of like shut down and sequestered because of everything that's happening. What are y'all's plans to see, if you have plans to go see it, or is that a thing that y'all are going to do?
Absolutely, but it's going to be in a safe circumstance.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And if that takes 2.5, 3 weeks before I can see it, then that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Like one thing I'm struggling right now is Saturday night. I have concert tickets.
Yeah.
Now it's a venue that requires masks. It's a venue that requires proof of vax to get in. I'm by Princeton University. It's not exactly a hotbed of anti-vaxxers here, but it's going to come down to that afternoon whether I decide to go or not for Bunny Light Horseman. And that was like far and away you talked about Mastodon was your favorite album of 2021. The Bonnie Light Horseman, which if people don't know it, it's Anais who wrote Hadestown, talking about theater, and members of the Shins and the National in a sort of kind of like Americana folk supergroup. That's a side project. So that was like hands down my favorite album of 2020. I was really looking forward to it, but I'm gonna make a judgment call come Saturday and see how things are. And also another thing is like you guys know what a massive fan I am of the Who. That they're like far and away one of my favorite groups. They have an on sale going on. I'm not even bothering because I'm just so worried about the dates being pushed back, and another wave of some kind of nonsense. And that's a weird circumstance to be in, where you're just like, oh, I'm gonna hold off.
Yeah.
Or where there are certain groups where I would just have to get that coverage quick. I have to. It's strange.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, I think in a couple weeks, depending, obviously, because it is coming out in March, but like depending on how things are, I mean, we finally did see Spider-Man last week. Last week on Monday, because it was an empty movie theater. I mean, we had like maybe 6 other people in the entire screening, and that was totally good. I might do the same thing for Batman, but it just depends. It depends on how I feel and whatnot.
And the geek stuff to me is kind of driving me nuts, because they do have that preview screening where there's an exclusive comic book, and like in the before times, I'd be like, that's me.
Well, yeah, but those preview screenings historically have just been packed to the gills.
Exactly.
And forget that. I'm not into that.
Oh, no.
I did want to say we do have some other people who have joined us tonight.
Yes!
And just want to pop them up here.
Universal
so we
symbol
have
for yes.
David Toby.
Hey,
David
gentlemen.
Toby. He did make a little joke for John's note here. Will we be assembling cabinets? No, probably not. I never got the lesbian gene. I don't know. Tony Gilkinson has also joined us.
Hey,
the Justice
Tony.
League of Bears. Hey, Tony.
Sorry,
and,
he did inhaling crack earlier, Tony, but I couldn't resist. Okay.
We've got Rob Allen, who also is commenting on Caleb's acquisitions of the Black Hammer books. So he also has those, Caleb. Congrats, which are pretty awesome. And then also David did mention here, none of the merch has Selena Kyle as Catwoman, and I think that's probably on purpose. She's probably just Selena Kyle throughout the film, and then maybe at the end of the movie. Whatever. Or
there is that segment in one of the trailers where they do say the Bat and the Cat.
The Bat and the Cat.
Yeah.
And of course they allude to her
as she was in her first appearance.
Exactly. They allude to her like being a cat lady because she's got lots of cats in her apartment, of course. So because she likes strays. So yeah, I'm sure it's going to be one of those like it's Catwoman.
Yeah.
And let's see, what else do we have here? Also, John is like, you've got this built. I'm on a similar request myself. Looking forward to June, and that is a reference, of course, to us all coming together in person in June.
I don't know about Steve if you have any dedication, but I am resolved that there's going to be less of me coming down to Charlotte.
I mean,
there's going to be less of me. It may not be to where I want to be, but there's going to be less of me.
Probably the weird place to say this on the podcast called Comic Book Bears, but like my goal is to have an ab by the time I get to Charlotte. Like
just one.
That's
just
my like. I just want like a little like. I'm going for muscle bear at this point. If I can't have a beard, I at least want to be stacked like a brick shit house. So that's what I'm shooting for. I'm trying to earn my place on this show.
Well, the thing is, there's part of me is like, okay, let's go for the power lifter edge, which to me was always guys that lifted that never did sit-ups. And I probably could kind of pull that off a little bit, but I want to live a longer life than I'm scheduled for right now. So that's a big part of it.
Scheduled for? Aww.
It's a good goal, right? It's a good goal.
Yep. Yeah. And there's things where I didn't get bearish until my 30s, maybe. I was for the longest time, I know Steve, we've talked about this, if you do see me in person, I give off a vibe of like retired astronaut. Like you can tell I used to be in shape, so
I don't know. Pretty beefy lifeguard Bill has something to say. Is raising his hand over here. It's like, he's always been bearish.
Yeah, no. Not till I was like in my 30s, I think. I mean, I had a beard, but it wasn't really bearish. I don't think.
So Bill, if you give off retired astronaut vibes, can we work on a moon landing?
Slow clap. Slow clap. Oh, goodness gracious.
50 points for Caleb. 5 points for Gryffindor. All right.
Arbitrary points for no reason. For something.
All right. Well, the name of the show is Comic Book Bears, so let's start diving into the comic book area of things. And Steve, you said you were compiling a couple of news items that hit this week. You know, we're not going to go into a very deep dive on them, but at least going to comment on what we feel and how.
Yeah, a couple things that kind of caught my eye, and feel free to jump in if there's something that caught your eye. But the number one thing that was just announced is the new DC summer event, and usually when it's DC, it's something crisis, and that's no no difference here. It is Dark Crisis. That's launching with the preview issue number 0 on Free Comic Book Day, and has its number 1 in June, and it's going to be a summer monthly series. With, I'm sure, some tie-ins with other with other series as well. It's coming out of what's coming up for issue number 75 of Justice League, which is the quote-unquote death of the Justice League. So no major spoilers there, of course. But the tagline here for Dark Crisis is that the heroes left behind in the wake of the so-called death of the Justice League must come together to combat a great evil and also save the lost Justice League. But what happens when not everybody wants to pitch in and help? So it's being written by Joshua Williamson and drawn by Daniel Sampere for the main titles. Not so much said about the tie-ins yet, but I'm sure that's going to be coming in the next couple of weeks, and over the next few months of previews, we'll probably see what's more ahead for the additional issues. But I mean, it looks like it could be really interesting. It seems a little bit different from other crises in the past. It may or may not be a massive multiversal spanning event this time, but it probably will have quite a bit of galactic elements. I can assume, given the direction of the Justice League right now and what's going on in that book. So, could be really cool. And honestly, I think it probably has a lot to live up to. And this is from what people have told me, compared to the the new or the more recent. I would say sort of maxi series by is it Tom Taylor that's doing it?
Dark Knights of Steel.
Dark Knights of Steel, and that wasn't even supposed to be a major event, but this book is getting a ton of praise, which I probably should pick up and read finally.
Yep. You will be in luck, for the first 3 issues are being reprinted in one volume, and pretty affordably. I think at like a $5.99 price point, and that's out very early March or April.
Perfect.
So you should be on the lookout for that, where it's a compendium that has issues 1 through 3, and it's really like a very good price point, like far less than you would have paid for the 30 issues. Because those are like those, and they're doing this to avoid like the like 7th printings and all that. It's a nice move. They've done it a couple of times before with Teen Titans, with the Future State issues, which became hot because of Red X. And the early issues, though, the sales really tapered off of the Batman and Scooby-Doo mysteries. That had a compendium, which were the first 2 issues. So it's nice to see something that's a little different than like continual additional printings. And still making that material available before the month's wait for a trade. So,
well, exactly. Nice. And the one thing, though, and the reason I brought that up is I'm really hoping that this Dark Crisis being the big event book for DC, that it's not kind of shadowed by what's so far a pretty good, unexpectedly well-received maxi series that's kind of out of continuity. And I mean, it's all in continuity, but you know what I mean. that this event doesn't just kind of become like a non-starter fizzle thing. I'm hoping.
Well,
it's kind of difficult. It's an odd year for it. So
Joshua Williamson is almost like an editor-in-chief right now. He's
Mhm.
overseeing a lot of the line, and in recent years, he's been one of the more energetic and more consistent writers over at DC. I don't think necessarily the Flash or Robin or marquee titles, but he's done good work.
Solid.
Solid.
Yeah, they're solid.
And,
I've got his Flash run sitting right beside my desk. That's one of the things I'm going to try to read after
No,
school
there's good stuff in there, but he's very enthusiastic. The title I think is goofy, but at the same token, it also screams to me of like, all right, we probably should service mark certain blank crisis. Like seriously, I mean, it's what if Marvel had a book that's a Dark Crisis and there's nothing DC can do about it because it's free and open.
Yeah.
There are things about that make sense. This also was what Dan DiDio wanted to call Dark Knight's Metal. So the name has been out there.
Well, it was also supposed to be kind of a lead into the 5G 5G thing, which didn't happen. So the idea is here is like they're taking some of those elements that would have led into 5G and the future state and kind of putting it into a crisis book. And again, I'm staying open for this. I'm hoping that it's going to be a really good show.
Yeah,
so
really good show.
I'm glad the 5G stuff didn't happen the way it was originally planned to, but I do want to come out and say in defense of it, like I've enjoyed some of the miniseries. I've enjoyed some of the stuff that's came out as back matter or came out as just like 4-issue series that I think was written and drawn for the 5G, and they had like longer plans for it. I've enjoyed it as for the same reason I like a lot of the DC Black Label stuff, like the out of continuity maxi series, like. You give me a story that's not necessarily shackled to continuity that can do all kinds of things. Tom King's a good example of this with his stuff. Yeah. I really enjoy that because you can kind of go crazy, go wild with it. So there's been a lot of the future state or whatever it was called stuff that was pegged for the 5G stuff that I've actually really enjoyed because it's just separate. It's just this little bubble of stuff. And I don't think I would have liked it if it had been mainstream, if that had been the DC line. But just served after the fact like it was. There's been some fun stuff in there.
Yeah.
There is some stuff I've enjoyed, particularly in the Superman world, with Superman and the Authority, and
Superman Authority,
what eventually became
Son of Kal-El.
There's also been stuff I can't stand.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think that's true.
Ram v Swamp Thing, I can't stand that book.
Can't co-sign with you on that one.
I know you can't. I can't stand it. I hate it.
Staying out of
it. One that's a bit of a surprise is I'm actually kind of getting into it a little bit, just as I think as it's wrapping up, is the Batman Gotham State, whatever the black and white series is.
Yeah.
That's gotten a little better, and that's one that's clearly set in the future state world. That's gotten better. I was not a fan of future state stuff. There's been things that I think some of the executions later were okay. Like I really didn't like the Yara Flor Wonder Girl material that came out during future state. I thought the ongoing series, which sadly has been canceled now, that's been a little better. They've had more landscape to work with.
Speaking of Yara Flor, did you all see the big kind of kerfluffle that Joelle Jones got into this past week?
Yes.
No. Internet sleuths being what they are, somebody saw a promo that she did and recognized some of the figures that she had drawn, and apparently, for better or worse, she cribbed them. Like she straight up just swiped them from former artists, and they had a list of this is actually this and stuff like that. Now, like to be fair, like, and some people made a really good defense of the concept. Like Jack Kirby was the king of swiping. He said, and Wally Wood, why draw when you can swipe, and why swipe what you can steal? So you've had some famous people doing that, but I just thought it was interesting that a lot of people, that was kind of big news that she did that. But I do also think that if you look at like 95% of the other figures in there, they're clearly just her. like
Right.
they're her work. So she drew most of it and just pulled a few things. Imitation, they say, is the best form of flattery. I don't know. I do think it's interesting that an artist that I'll to put it nicely, takes their time the way that Joelle does, and is doesn't meet deadlines, is really slow. That they're also swiping things. That was curious. I mean, I'm not going to stop buying the books. I think she's a phenomenal artist.
Oh yeah.
I just thought that was look. We live in the internet day and age, guys. Like
everybody's going to find
it. You exist at the whims of a public market with these things. So just
attribution is your friend. Attribution is your friend.
And as I've seen those images, I mean, I do think that one bit of Storm and Donna Troy, that I think that was probably a trace. Some of the others, though, some of those are such stock poses that I wouldn't be surprised if there is an element of subconscious plagiarism,
right?
Because that happens all the time. As a guy who's been in a band, I got this great riff. It turns out it's Around the World in 80 Days, just on heavy metal guitar. So it does happen. Yeah,
I saw someone attribute, like somebody made the attribution that jokingly, like she was the female Greg Land, and I don't think that's a fair assessment. Like I don't think that's fair at all. Like Greg Land does what Greg also. And I'm going to say, I'm not a Greg Land fan. I don't like his art's not my cup of tea, but being Greg Land has worked out really, really well for Greg Land. Like that dude makes a lot of money. So if you're going to have to be somebody and you can be Greg Land, then you've got a fat bank account. So, and still getting jobs.
Also with Greg Land, there was, let's just say there was a method to what he did.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I'm just taking a porn image and putting, there were enhancements there that were Greg Land,
Well, and if you look at current artists today, case in point, of course I would go blank when I'm trying to think of it. Did the book with Jeff Lemire about the Black Barn. Also did the Green Arrow series with Jeff Lemire.
Jock?
No,
that's who did the Jock. Didn't Jock do that? No, that wasn't Jock. Sorrento.
Yeah, you look Sorrento? At Andrea. Yeah. You look at Andrea Sorrento. Yes, Sorrentino.
Sorrentino.
Thank you, Adam. Yes. You look at artists like Adam Sorrentino.
Thank you, Adam Anderson.
Thank you, Adam.
who pulled directly from these photos. I mean, a lot of his stuff is just. A lot of Sorrentino stuff is just images, and he uses a lot of celebrities in his work, and you can see that. An artist that I don't particularly like, Kuderansky, does the same thing. So you look at stuff that Greg Land has done, and now there are some big name artists who have a lot of weight and who have really good reputations. Sorrentino especially, who do that type of art, and so there's a market for it, especially when you can bridge the gap between this era of, hey, we can, we've had filmmakers taking these celebrities and adhering these celebrities to these iconic characters. Well, now we have artists who can do that before the movie's made. They can cast these people and do that. So is it great? I don't know. But is it artistic? Sure. And I think people like Greg Land really played part and parcel into bridging that gap.
Well, and that's a really good point. I mean, we have, there's so many different types of artists that are in comics today. You have the photorealistic artists that really kind of make it their trade to have the most physically accurate, looks like they could be a photograph, probably were taken right from a photograph as photo reference, or characters that already exist, actors that exist, all of that. And then you also have the very unusual, much more artistic license, different types of influences where it's much more cartoony. It's much more, interpretive.
Comics.
There's style for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, comics art ranges from Tom Gauld to Alex Ross, and that is an amazing thing. That is a thing to be celebrated, and I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
I was just thinking, if Riley Rossmo is using photo reference, I never want to see those people.
No.
God.
I never want to
see
that
would be
people.
horrific. Like, what? What happened to their head and face and arms?
I love that man. I love that man.
Riley Rossimo.
I would never want to see anybody that's close to what his art.
I've got that man's art hanging on my wall. I love that man.
All right, Steve, what else you got? I think we have a few more items.
Yeah, one other quick item. It probably could have a lot more discussion, so maybe we'll keep it short, just because it could go kind of crazy. It is art related, and that is Greg Smallwood. His experience just recently this week that he did talk about on Twitter, where his artwork for Elektra, Black and White #2. Was modified by the Marvel bullpen of artists. They made some adjustments to his Asian characters, the art that he drew for these characters, due to some kind of, I guess there's some kind of, standards and practices that they were referring to in the depiction of Asian characters and Asian faces, and went and basically edited all of the eyes for a lot of these characters to make them wider and more rounded and smaller people. Like it was very interesting choices, mostly around the eyes, and also some implied nudity that was then covered up with very bad one-piece bathing suits and things like that didn't make any sense for for the creatures and characters that he was drawing. Erica Henderson, I think, probably
for the win.
Yeah, I loved Erica this morning. It's yesterday. Just really kind of put it in such a great way, concisely. She'd putting intense makeup on and giving the eyelid surgery to perfectly normal drawings. And again, to be fair to Marvel Editorial, they did apologize to Greg Smallwood for this. They said that there was a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, and that his original art will be the what you see in digital copies on Marvel Unlimited and Comixology, as well as any reprintings. They will be showing the original art and not the edited version. But what went to press and what went to print, and for the majority of people who are going to be reading this, it is going to be the edited stuff. And Erica's response to everything was, you'd think with a Japanese man as editor-in-chief this wouldn't happen.
Oh boy.
Yes. Hat tipped. Yes. So.
And I think the only other news item is Donald Faison has basically all but confirmed that he is playing Booster Gold in the Legends of Tomorrow finale.
I mean, it's a golden character, a golden cameo that could very well be Booster Gold, so probably is Booster Gold. I mean, it's not out of Warlock, different franchise.
Yeah. We only have 2 weeks left of Batwoman and of Legends of Tomorrow.
Exactly, and then Flash is coming back for the mid-season as well for that.
And then Stargirl in late July.
Yeah.
I'm so behind on those shows that it's almost daunting. Like I almost don't even want to try to catch back up. It's that daunting. I'm that far behind.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay because for the next several weeks it's just in reruns right now. Even the seasons that just started.
I'm several years behind.
Seasons, yeah.
Oh well, there you go. Okay, so if you're caught up on Superman and Lois and Naomi, then there's several weeks of reruns for now.
Someday when I'm sick with pneumonia, that's when I'll do The Walking Dead. Just do mainline it.
Are you sure you want to be sick with something watching The Walking Dead? That's kind of like having the flu and watching or reading Station 11. It's like, this my future? We're all gonna die.
That's the way it is, baby. That'll be when I do it.
Yeah. Well, that's the only time you have
downtime. I'm not the smartest fella.
No, it's just the only time you have downtime. You're like me. If I can move, I'm moving. So
But one thing, sometimes things spark I started looking at some TikTok people, just on the toilet or whatever, and
which is where TikTok shines.
And there's a lot of office content on TikTok. There's a lot of key scenes. So I ended up watching the first season, which is quick. It's only 6 episodes, and started on with the second. So you never know what's going to set you off. So I've been watching The Office a little bit after years. So, okay. All right. Well, let's talk about some comic books. We each have chosen 2 to talk about, and we, according to the clock here, really have to start moving on that. So, Steve, we'll always start with you when it's the 3 of us in this configuration. So, tell us about something you're reading that you're digging.
So I picked this up on a whim because, well, basically every time I see a DCYA book, I have to pick it up because I have yet to be really, truly disappointed by any of their YA books. Their kids line, there have been some disappointments. Okay. We had a big one, Bill and I did, just last year.
I was going to say, have you forgotten about...
No one could forget the Friendship Challenge.
I have to say, that was one of my best commentaries. I like if you had to provide a commentary of books that we talked about, that would be the one that I would want to have the highlight reel.
Yeah, definitely. Go back. You can find it on our YouTube channel. You can just go back and find that episode. We'll probably put in the show notes just so you can. Yeah, you can relive it.
I didn't like it.
Yeah, no, neither did I.
Not even a little bit.
The art I liked.
The art was great.
The art was great.
Yeah, the art was great.
But the story, Toilet Talk.
David,
yes,
Toilet Talk. David Toby, Toilet Talk is correct.
I was gonna have this vision of people, and I was like, "Oh, Bill's on the toilet. I guess he's on TikTok."
Yes. Yeah. And of course, yes, the lowest lane Friendship Challenge was the most intense of La Bambas. Exactly.
Yes, I will agree with that because there was some redemption with Fortnite with the special that we talked about.
Exactly. Fortnite made a comeback.
Too many tangents. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll shut up. You have to talk about this book.
Anyway, so their teen titles, the more teen-oriented titles from DC, have been just absolutely fantastic the past several years. I can't say enough good things about them. Some really great artists, a very great lineup of artists. They've got a lot of, writers and artists of color. They've had a lot of queer artists and writers that have been able to get their story ideas out there. And, I am just ever so grateful that DC's given them a platform because all the stories that I've been reading have been fantastic and fun and just really great, taking the spirit of the character and putting it in a brand new light. And Mr. Miracle is more of that type of take on the character. I really enjoyed it. This book, again, written by Varian Johnson, drawn by Daniel Isles, brings us back to sort of the origin of Mr. Miracle, of Scott Free, taking us back to his time at Granny Godfrey's, or Granny Goodness, not Granny Godfrey, Granny Goodness's orphanage, i.e. torture for children that just become, soldiers and fodder for apocalypse. But in this, it reimagines his origin, and treats sort of his time at Granny Goodness's Academy as almost like a military school / dorm high school experience that's also horrifying and violent. But of course captures a lot of his sarcasm and makes it, I think, a little bit more of a, kind of like a Peter Parker, type of snappy, and self-assured comebacks and chatter, which is a lot of fun. Reimagining his first encounter with Big Barda, who is the leader of the Female Furies, who are basically other students who are there to enforce the rules and Granny Goodness's sort of her idea of how to run and control children. And then, of course, you have several other major characters from from the Fourth World sort of mythos. You've got Haimon, I guess that's how you pronounce it. It makes his appearance as well. We've got Calabac, who shows up later in the book. There's some really great action sequences here. There's some really good heart in this story. You really get to understand Scott Free's conflict there, where he wants to escape, but he's also good-hearted enough that he wants to escape for other people. He has someone, Haimon's granddaughter, is very sick and needs to get out of Apocalypse altogether to find find medicine, to find a way to get healed, and going to Earth is that escape for her. So he needs to help her, but he also has his friends that are also in this big torture chamber called a school or an orphanage that he also wants to help, but he knows he may not be able to. And then, of course, his budding romance with Big Barda, kind of understanding his relationship to her, whether he can trust her, and, of course, realizing that he wants to help her as well. Very good read, very fun. I would definitely recommend this to teens and adults. It's a great read all around, and a very hopeful book, and I am also hopeful there will be a sequel to this, that we'll get to see him on Earth. So,
oh, you bastards! All right,
Yep.
DC guy here has a confession. I didn't pre-order this.
Well, neither did I. So I picked it
So
from my store.
what I think happened was, when it was solicited, I thought it was the trade of Mr. Miracle, the Source of Freedom, which
Yeah.
featured
Right.
Shiloh Norman, who was an African American character. I assume in this version that Scott Free is on the cover and that he's Darkseid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's
And the thing
there's
is,
a racial flip on that. Okay.
they do make reference to that.
I made nice with DCBS. They said they were going to add it, so hopefully it'll be at that price. So I will eventually be able to comment and enjoy. So pick them up, and I'll do the sad look. Just put them up there, both of you. There we go.
But yeah, they
For
do
you
talk
listening
about,
on the audio, but that was something we had to do. Okay.
they do talk about skin color being a factor here, but as part of the Apocalyptican caste system. In fact, there's an interesting scene with Granny Goodness that I don't think you would see in any other book featuring her as a character, because usually it's just this massive evil character, and there's really not much depth there. But there is some here, and it's specifically related to skin color, so it's very interesting. But yeah, I totally recommend this. So anybody who hasn't pre-ordered it, or can still pick it up at their local store, definitely do so.
Well, I'm
Mr. Miracle.
disappointed that Granny Goodness isn't running down with a cosmic dildo. That's all.
Well, there's a lot of cosmic dildos that are around in this book, so
yeah,
they're there. They're there.
I know 100%. So I haven't had a chance to read this yet. And what Bill was talking about earlier, for those who listen to the show, I've got my copy right in front of me too. I'm holding it up. Haven't had a chance to read it yet, but one thing I always enjoy about stuff like this that revolve around the fourth world stuff, which I'm not well read on. I just fully admit. I always like to see how people interpret Kirby in a modern age, without trying to copy his style. Now there are some artists that try to be Kirby. No one can, but they try to interpret his style close as they can get. This interprets Kirby. This does not try to re-illustrate or reiterate Kirby, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to hold up the double page spread that's in here that just really shows the cityscape, and you see all of these Kirby-esque elements, like the lasers, the way that the architecture and the structures of everything are shaped out. Very, very sharp edges. It's a beautiful imagining of Kirby. And when you see this, you see Kirby. And it's not just because it's a fourth world character, but there's Kirby in here, but it's not trying to be Jack Kirby, if you know what I mean. Like, it really is just it is a very loose, structured interpretation done with very sharp lines. And I appreciate that. And the muted colors all throughout the book. There's nothing glossy in this book. Everything is matte. I really like this color setup and style, but the artist on this book did a phenomenal job. And like I said, you see Kirby when you see this, but you don't see Kirby. That is a really terrible way of saying it, but I really appreciate the art that's in this book. I cannot wait to read this.
Yeah, you see the groundwork that he laid. I get exactly what you're saying. You see the groundwork, like the design groundwork that Kirby had, but these characters, the way that they're drawn, the way that they're presented, are definitely unique and not, just cribbed from, the Kirby template. So
Right.
it definitely works very well, and the style just really. It's very kinetic in certain parts too. I mean, this spread of Scott going through, a pretty
nice.
dangerous thing. It's great. You get
It's gorgeous.
the feeling. You get a very human look in these in kind of a cartoony context, and I really enjoyed it a lot from the art and the story. So yeah.
All right, let's go over to Caleb. Caleb, tell us about something you're reading that you're enjoying.
Well, I will. You want to tag team on something with me?
I think so. I think it's
yeah.
more that you're going to present what you're doing, and then I'll bring in some commentary.
Okay, perfect. So, I've got this stack of Black Hammer hardcovers behind me, and one thing I'm trying to do, really is read more collect the shelf porn because I like it, and throw more stuff on the shelf and revisit some of the older stuff. So, hardcovers being what they are, I've been buying a lot of omnibuses when I can, and I picked up the Avengers by John Byrne not too long ago when I took a trip to Nashville to see our friend Brian. Not the Brian who's on the show. We have a different friend named Brian, different bear. And so I've been slowly reading through this when I get a chance. And it starts off with the West Coast Avengers that Byrne was doing at the tail end of it. And we're nerds, we love lists. If I had to have a hierarchy of my favorite Marvel characters, Wanda, Scarlet Witch, is probably number 3 on that list. She's number 2 if I get to. No, she's number 3 on that list. Namor and Hulk are still above her, but I can rearrange it any given day. So this picks up there with some familiar themes that we've seen recently in the Marvel series, and so I've really enjoyed going back and reading this. I've read it before. It's been a long time since I picked it up, and I've always read it scattershot. So I've never actually gotten to sit down and just read this tome. So this starts off as kind of where John Byrne's the seeds of his story, his Avengers story starts off. Yeah. And it starts off in West Coast Avengers number 42, which was published in 1989. And it's one
I have to say, I looked at the story list in there, and there's a lot of non-Byrne material.
Yeah.
In that is so
there is.
I was surprised that was the title. But I guess it makes sense because it encompassed his tenure on both Avengers titles that were coming out at that time.
Well, I think it's probably one of those situations where it wasn't scripted, it wasn't scripted by John Byrne, but it's still largely his story.
Yeah.
And so because he was the marionette, he was kind of hurting the story where it needed to go. So I think that was probably why. But yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was, as I'm reading through this, I'm about a quarter of the way through it right now. I've already seen some of that stuff. I'm like, oh, this is strange. Is
there any forward or back matter about the run? Because I know sometimes the Omnibus are loaded with that, and then other times it's quite skimpy.
This one, as far as a forward go, this one's skimpy on the forward. Now, I have not. Okay. There is no introduction. Nothing is being written by John Byrne. Now, I will say there's a little bit of back matter. Yeah. You get a lot of the covers. You get some unused cover art. You get some of. There's some writing that's been done.
Okay. Because I think there's something very important to note about this particular run. And Caleb, I didn't know if you knew this, but this took place just after Byrne's Superman run ended.
Yeah.
And he went back to Marvel. He was already doing the Star brand on a bi-monthly basis. So he went back and he wanted Fantastic Four and the Avengers. He wanted those 2 books. And Marvel was petty as shit. And they said no. And that's how he ended up getting Avengers West. At the time, it was West Coast Avengers. It eventually gets retitled Avengers West Coast. I know,
right?
Earth-shattering change there. And then with the Fantastic Four being blocked from him, that's when the She-Hulk solo series went into his hands. So he basically transformed the West Coast Avengers into the main Avengers title.
And he did he did that thing by taking these subpar characters that were unpopular. They weren't the main heroes, and he blew them up. He made them larger than life, and he made people pay attention to them.
But at the same time, they were quintessentially Avengers.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, Hawkeye is Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, the
Hawkeye, WandaVision, and just did amazing things with U.S. Agent that had not been done in Captain America.
I've just gotten to the point in the story where he comes in the scene. So I was going to say some of the back matter in this book you were asking about. They reprint some of the Marvel Age magazine.
Okay.
And so you get a lot of the articles and stuff from the Marvel Age magazine, the fanzine. that was published at the time. I'm not going to keep holding this up there because my arms are tired. So I'm going to put the omnibus down. But where the story opens up at is in West Coast Avengers. They're kind of in flux. They're in turmoil, right? So at this time, you've got Clint Barton, who is supposed to be the chairman of the West Coast Avengers. But, he's feeling some kind of way because there's all of these large personalities in the room and these leaders that are there because he's on the team with Hank Pym. He's on the team with Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, who, has been a long-running leader of the Avengers. And she tends to take charge. Scarlet Witch is there and Vision is there. And so you have, like Bill said, these quintessential Avengers who are not on the main team who have moved out. At this point in time, Clint Barton is going through his divorce. It's very contentious. They are him and Mockingbird are not fans of each other. They're having a hard time, but they still love each other. So there's always this. Byrne does a really good job of having these two characters at each other's throats while still letting you know there's still something there, and like they're not ready to quite give it up yet. So all of this is going on, and in the first couple of stories, and like I said, this is a big omnibus, and I have not read all of it yet. Just full disclosure. So I'll let Bill kind of take and walk through some of the more important Byrne points. But where this starts off at is Wanda, Scarlet Witch, my girl, is having this moment, and she is, things are weird. She's had these twins. That were formerly inconceivable with the Vision. These which, by the way, the meme, the panel that you always see of Byrne can't draw babies, it's in this issue, and Byrne cannot draw babies. So it says, I'm flipping through there, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was great. But she's having this weird moment because Vision has gone missing and she's not sure where he's at and she doesn't know what's going on. And now she's she's going to all these other Avengers and, have you seen Vision? This is not like him. So he's kind of vanished. And meanwhile, her nanny apparently just goes crazy because she comes downstairs screaming about the kids are missing and they're no longer there. And, Wanda goes back up to the nursery and lo and behold, the kids are there. And so she fires that nanny and promptly hires another one. And what if you know history, and I think we're far enough down the line now, we can spoil some things. This is the beginning of Wanda going insane. This is the beginning of her having her mental health breakdown, her personal crisis. She has created this family using her chaos magic to fill in certain holes. And now, Marvel has since then done a fantastic job of creating, Wiccan and creating Speed and creating all this world around it. But at the time, they weren't there. And she's just having this moment where she doesn't realize that she's manifesting all these things. But they have to figure out what's going on with Vision. And there's also some early seeds that Byrne plants here with Wonder Man, because Wonder Man is also on the team. And, George Perez and Kurt Busiek use that later on where they become a couple. When one of my personal favorite runs. You've got Tigra, who's on this team as well, who's also slowly losing her mind. It seems like she's going more feral. She can't control it. So you've got all of these people who are dejected and disconnected. They're not cohesive as a team. They all have their own things going on. Hank Pym is not being Ant-Man. He's just sitting to the side. And they're supposed to act as a team. They're supposed to be a cohesive unit, and it's not working. But they do coalesce around the idea that they have to go find Vision, because what happens early on in the first couple stories, the first two issues, I think, is they realize that it's not just that Vision is missing. Someone has breached the Avengers or the West Coast Avengers mansion, the compound, and they've kidnapped him. How this happens is an Ultron, of course, my favorite villain. I love Ultron. He's my dude. Shows up, starts wrecking shop, and they have to punch, fight, kill to get past Ultron. But they realize that something's wrong here. This isn't Ultron. Like, this is just a facsimile of Ultron. What's going on with this? It was a distraction, and they don't know how or who has planned this. When lo and behold, Clint Barton's ex Mockingbird shows up on the scene and is like, "Hey guys, I got answers." Turns out I fucked up real bad. The thing about Mockingbird, and the thing that I think is
such a great way to put it,
right? The thing about Mockingbird is she wears a lot of hats. She's is Mockingbird anybody's favorite character? I don't know. Maybe, but she does a lot of cool stuff. She's an Avenger, but she's also a SHIELD agent. So what has happened here is that Mockingbird was also apparently not a very good spy. If she was duped this easy, I'm just saying. But she was approached by people claiming to be Shield, and they said, "Hey, look, Vision, he just hacked into the entire computer network of the world. He is now a global threat. We exist at the whim of his good nature. We can't have that as governments. What happens if he flips a screw? What happens if something like short circuits inside him and he becomes evil? He could end the world. We don't want that. So we as Shield need you to help us plan a contingency plan. We need you to figure out how to breach the compound, get in there, get to the Vision. All of this is hypothetical, totally not going to do it. It's just we need this. It's the Nick Fury thing, right? Always have an answer to the question that hasn't been asked yet. And so she does. She lays out the schematics. She lays out the spy. She lets them know how to get in there. They create the scenario, distraction. And part of that was using a fake Ultron that they built to go in there. And so she notices all of these cues, and she's like, okay, this has apparently happened. So I need to go let them know what's up. And it turns out it wasn't Shield, or at least not Shield in its entirety. This was orchestrated and perpetuated by an organizational, almost like JSOP, right? Like these are just a conglomerate of global units, because she thought that she was dealing, like she got kidnapped so that they would keep her out of the picture. She thought she was kidnapped by the KGB, right? She thought she was in the USSR because it was USSR prisons, but it wasn't. So it was all these people working in concert. And eventually what happens is they boil down and they get to the point to where they hunt down the Vision. They're able to track him down through some subterfuge, through connecting some dots, and the Vision has been dismantled. And we see part of this, seeds of this made its way to the show, the Disney Plus show, through sheer genius and mechanics and love and will of Wanda and pushing Hank Pym and everybody else. They are able to reconstruct Vision, but he lacks his humanity. The Vision's brainwaves are famously based after Simon Williams' Wonder Man, and Simon Williams did not give his brain patterns willingly. They were taken from him. He was almost molested in a way to creating the Vision as a brother figure, and he didn't have a choice. It violated his person. And he can't, as much as he loves Wanda and much as he wants to be part of the team, he has this moment where he's like, I can't do this. I can't make another me. It's not fair to me. I'm sorry. And of course, Wanda's pissed. She's like, I want my husband back and the father of my children. How dare you do this? And slaps the shit out of him. I mean, she went full Zsa Zsa Gabor. I was proud. And just has this moment of debilitation. But they're able to put Vision back together. And Hank Pym has this idea. It's like, okay, we're going to teach him. We're going to show him all the world as he knew it. And we're going to try to bring him back. But something happens, and he washes out. All of his color's gone, and you get this white version, this pure, stark milk white version of the Vision, who flies around, goes on Johnny Cochran, is trying to remind the world of everybody that he is and who he was, but just lacks the humanity and the nature of who he was. Knows that he's supposed to love Wanda, but doesn't know what love is, and just creates this entire platform, this entire foundation of what will be one of the greatest moments in Marvel history for me, and in the breakdown of Wanda. And John Byrne plants all of these seeds in here. There's this really fun scene where the Great Lake Avengers become involved, and that's leading into his Avengers run, because Hawkeye is like, hey, I quit the West Coast. I'm done with this. Y'all are stepping on my toes. I can't deal with this. So I'm going to go lead like Flatman and Bertha. I'll be over here if you need me. And of course, Captain America's just like, what are you doing, dude? Like, I've got the Avengers over here. They're doing that over there. Like, we gave it to you on a silver platter. Like, your ego's getting in the way, man. John Byrne knows these characters. He knows the building blocks. I will say, as like I've always said this, I think John Byrne is a much better artist than he is a writer. The dialogue seems stunted and stilted in a lot of this. No humans speak this way, which was true of a lot of comics, right? Like, that's true of a lot of this era and early era comics. It's not true to form, but sometimes if you take the dialogue away from, say, Tigra in this, and you could apply it to another person, it would just be easily applicable. There's no personality in it. His art in these, you can tell he was feeling some kind of way about not getting the Avengers, and like Bill said, not getting the Fantastic Four. Sometimes he puts his heart and soul into these images, and he's drawing Wanda as being just voluptuous and curvy and attractive and seductory, sultry, just beautiful. And other times he, when he draws Simon Williams, he's like, yeah, here's a head, like here's an outline, like here's very vague.
But also keep in mind for Byrne, at this point, he was drawing 2.5 books a month
right.
and writing the equivalent of 5.
Yep. The
So
man was busy.
he was busy.
Yeah. So for sure,
probably took some shortcuts.
So, well, I'm curious though. Like, a part of me wonders if those shortcuts were because he was, insulted. He was feeling insulted, or if he was just overworked and couldn't do it all. I probably a mix of both, as with most things. But if you were an Avengers fan, if you're like me, if you're a Wanda fan, a Scarlet Witch fan, if you can get your hands on this omnibus, it's well worth it. I am thoroughly enjoying reading it. It's again, this is the building blocks of the team that I fell in love with. With the Busick and Perez run, like that's what made me fall in love with these people. And so going back and revisiting this and finding enjoyment and finding love and just seeing through the benefit of hindsight, just all the connectivity throughout the history of Marvel. Things that were initiated in the 60s didn't come to fruition until the 2000s. And you see a lot of that here. And also seeing the pop culture influence of film and the cinematic universe that was built by Byrne. And I know Byrne's a controversial figure now. It's one of those people that I'm just like, shut up, just don't say words. And that might be better for you and for me as a person who wants to appreciate you. But this is one of those situations where I will proclaim myself a hypocrite because I will separate the art from the artist in this, where I won't do it in other situations. But look, I'm a hypocrite. I'll fully admit it, and I'll own that in this circumstance. But this is phenomenal Avengers. It really is. It is funny. It's lighthearted. And the issue where Vision goes on Johnny Cochran and is with Pee Wee Herman.
You are so in law school. It's Johnny Carson.
Yeah, sorry.
You are so in law school.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, where he goes on Carson and he's up there with Pee Wee Herman and Chachi. Is hilarious. And just that scene at the end of that issue where all the Avengers are watching it and they're embarrassed and they're just dying laughing, and it's the funniest thing they've ever seen. As he just announces who he is and reminds everybody he's a hero and don't freak out if I come save you. I love this. It is dear to my heart. They say you can't go home again, but you can sure as hell buy an omnibus.
Okay.
And it makes you feel some kind of way.
First question I have for you, Caleb. How far in the omnibus have you gotten?
I'm about 4 issues into his actual Avengers run.
Okay. So you have a lot to go.
Yes, yeah.
I will try to preview this without spoiling material in there. When you do get through it, I'll be interested to hear your take on things. West Coast Avengers is one of my favorite titles, not because it was great, but it was always fun.
Right.
It was always very superhero-y. And just to give a very brief history, started as a miniseries with Hawkeye forming a team due to the Vision being the chairman and thought the Avengers should have a bigger scope. So the miniseries is terrible. It's early 80s Marvel's garbage. It's garbage. Then you get to the regular series. And the regular series is written by initially Steve Englehart. Now, Steve Englehart in the 70s was far and away one of the best writers, between the Batman material that he did with Marshall Rogers and the Secret Empire and the whole politicization, that word, with Captain America. The things he did with the Avengers, with the Celestial Madonna and Mantis, then goes over to DC and puts out a year's worth of fantastic Justice League stories, which are in the giant size. So they're 37, 38 pages long, which is the perfect format for a team book, for a monthly team book.
Yep.
And there's weird shit that goes on in there. Like the Wonder Woman that's in Steve Englehart's run is like a total princess bitch, and it's kind of jarring. But like after like an issue, you kind of get used to it. But when he came back in the 80s, he didn't have that trailblazer tag to him. He really was a very conventional comic book writer at that point, and some of it was really good. like the Green Lantern stuff that he did, that's when he really expanded the core. So introduced characters like Kilowog and Aricia, and they became major characters, brought John Stewart and Guy Gardner up to the forefront.
That was with Joe Staten, right? That was the run
Joe
he did.
Staten, yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. And so there was some stuff he was doing really well. His Fantastic Four is awful. Fantastic Four is it's awful. I'm sorry.
Well, he's in good company with that. There's a lot of awful Fantastic Four.
There's a lot of people that just can't seem to do like a decent Fantastic Four, no matter how much I enjoy their other work. And he was the writer on West Coast Avengers, and I think this is something that I said previously. There were a lot of points in the run where West Coast Avengers felt far more Avengery than the main title. It had a much more Avengers-ish lineup with, at the time it was Rhodey as Iron Man, and Hawkeye and Mockingbird and Tigra and Wonder Man. You eventually have Wasp joining the team. You have, and it's in the run there. Hank Pym comes on very early in the series as a scientific advisor.
Right.
So he's always around. Weird stuff happens to him. He attempts to commit suicide. Moon Knight joins the team, but it's all very superhero-y. Mockingbird, there's weird shit that goes on with her. There's weird rape stuff. But it's like you kind of have to experience it, you know, to like she was raped, with the way I'm delivering it, but it was a ghost and all this stuff. So you'll have to read it. It doesn't work, but it's still part of the ride. Let's put it that way. And at the very tail end of the run, Wanda and Vision rejoin the team. Were you going to say something, Steve?
No, just hearing some stuff happened, like just the description. I mean, when you put it, and this is kind of, I think, when you're describing a lot of comic book stuff that happens in the 70s and 80s, so much happens in the pages of an issue, and especially in the 60s and 70s, where it was like one and done issues where anything insane could happen. I mean, you could have like a year's worth of stories could have the most insane swings from absolutely ridiculous to heartfelt and like very serious work to something that's somewhere in the middle to something that goes all the way to the other end.
Byrne's Fantastic Four is a perfect example of this. In Byrne's Fantastic Four, there's an issue where there's a fan of Johnny Storm who ends up in a burn unit.
Yeah.
And it is an excellent story, and it's framed by like crazy shit. Like that, like the surrounding issues, like are almost have nothing to do with that particular story. So that's
probably has something to do with like mole people, like looking for magic diamonds or something.
Before we move on too quick, though, I do want to throw, like there were a lot of these instances, like the thing you're talking about with Mockingbird and the rape scene. Like that is, that's one of those things that in we tend to look down on the way it was handled in the past, and because you have a lot of these. I mean, you had a few women. It wasn't just completely a boys' club, but it was pretty much a boys' club. And so you had a few women who were there, but there was a lot of stuff that was just being nonchalantly mishandled.
Yes.
Case in point. And I read an issue earlier today. U.S. agent, who, by the way, like you were talking about the politicization of Captain America. U.S. agent is a really good example of that because he steps in to lead the West Coast Avengers team, and actually the government is making that happen. But there's one scene in here where Tigra is she's gone feral, and he just grabs her and slaps the hell out of her, and it's not addressed the fact that this man just beat a woman because she wasn't acting right. So stuff like, I do want to throw out just a caveat, like stuff like that is in here. It was published, it was printed. We have to contend with it, but we can do so. To me, it doesn't ruin the entirety of the story, but in the history of it, it would never be printed or published today, I don't think. But it's part and parcel of this. The same thing with the Hank Pym, hitting his wife.
The only caveat I will provide for that was, at least with the Hank Pym material,
He
that
wasn't
that
writing
was
it.
that was presented as something that was not right.
It was negative, yeah, and
Yeah.
it had consequence. And now there's a lot of stuff in here that doesn't have consequence.
Yeah.
But I think we like that. That's part of the growing medium or the growing big two side of the medium, growing pains, and so we have to contend with that, right?
Yeah. So as the series goes on, you're going to be coming into the later issues of Byrne's run. You'll see the original Human Torch comes on the scene, joins the team. There's also a lot of connective tissue between him and Vision.
Oh yeah.
So
literally,
that's addressed. But no, there's a twist there. So you'll see. And then as Byrne leaves, then Roy Thomas with his wife end up writing the series till its end, and then it's reformatted as ForceWorks. I have the ForceWorks for me is so bad it's good. Because that was one of the instances where Marvel and DC were taking their cues from Image and trying to make a very Image team, and they just shouldn't have done that.
I've got most of those issues. I didn't know that you were such a big fan. Yeah, I've
oh my god, oh my god, I love, for all the wrong reasons, ForceWorks and Extreme Justice.
Look, you give me that first issue with the pop up, and I'm just you have me. I love a good gimmick. Like
all right, you want to hear? This is the ultimate gimmick, Caleb, and this is, if we ever have the opportunity, we're going to co-write this. Like I said, Extreme Justice was DC's version of effectively ForceWorks of trying to do a Wildcat, Cyber Force, Youngblood type of team. Amalgam Comics bashed together ForceWorks and Extreme Justice, as I guess Justice Works or something. And all the characters work. The Century Twins, Blue Spider, Warman, they're all there. They're all there. So that would be like our amalgam title if
we can make that happen.
We can make that happen.
Yeah.
But you have to have die cut hologram.
You got, every issue has to have a 90s gimmick. Every issue.
Exactly.
We're gonna have a die cut hollow foil pop up with spot varnish. Like that's like all.
Oh yeah,
cards in each of them,
but featuring a different character
and cards in each of them.
Every variant. So, like, you have to get all the variants for each issue.
But that only happens on the first issue.
Yeah,
sure. In the 90s. It was only the first issue.
Yep.
Or the anniversary issue. And the anniversary issue could be, it made it to issue 5. It's a special issue.
Okay. So anyway, Roy Thomas oversees it to the end. Roy's well past his prime as a comic writer, but it still remains fun. You have good character development with U.S. Agent continuing. Julia Carpenter as Spider-Woman joins the team, and she's fleshed out as a character for the first time. You really feel like this was kind of like the bargain basement, that he'd just take anybody that they would allow him to have. So there's weird things like Darkhawk joins the team as a reserve member. Darkhawk lives in Queens with a West Coast team, but that's okay. So I have a real soft spot for West Coast Avengers, because I do think that there was a lot of chaos in the main Avengers title for most of the 80s. And you'll see that when you get to the book. There's no fixed lineup when you join them, when Byrne starts up with the team. There's no fixed lineup. You also have the Spider-Man joining the team for the first time. It's resolved in a really clunky way. Michelini and McFarlane raised hell about Spider-Man being on the team, so it's resolved, let's put it that way, without spoiling. And it doesn't feel natural. And again, that's an issue that Byrne didn't write and came right after his departure from the Avengers title. But you got some fun stuff ahead of you there.
Well, and one thing that Byrne does early on, and I'm fairly certain this was original to Byrne. I'm not 100% sure. So some of the historians, or Bill, you could probably tell, Steve, you may know too, but Byrne kind of plants this concept of once an Avenger, always an Avenger. Early on in this book, because beforehand there always was the fixed. We have a fixed roster.
Yeah.
So you have this scene, and I forget, it's one of the initial Avengers where he's done writing West Coast, and he's moved over to writing the Avengers, where Captain America has done a casting call or a cattle call, and he's brought everybody who has ever been an Avenger in, and he says, look, here's the thing. There is no West Coast. There is no East Coast. Great Lakes. We're not counting you, Great Lakes. You don't count. But look, if if you've ever been an Avenger and you've got the card, you're an Avenger. We need you on call, and you are on call. And if we're ever in your neighborhood and stuff goes down, we expect you to jump in. And it's not even that they necessarily needed to describe that, because these are all heroes, right? But I mean, you have everybody looped in too. You've got Namor, you've got T'Challa, you've got all of them who say, "Hey, look, yeah, you know what, you're right. There is no off duty when it comes to this. We are Earth's mightiest, and we will answer the call whenever it's delivered." So he kind of invents that concept, I think.
I would agree with that, because prior to that, it would only be like event issues like 100, 200, where you had that mentality of everybody joining in. It'll be interesting when you get to the issue where Tony Stark rejoins the West Coast team. You did get that far? Or?
I'm not that far. I've
because
read that
that's
before.
really interesting, because as you said, not everybody's crazy about that. Actually, no one's crazy about that, because it's almost like Dad is rejoining the team. And we were fine without Dad.
Well, especially with all of his baggage.
There's some interesting, So you got some fun stuff ahead of you. I really enjoy that. I mean, it's not stuff like these aren't comics that'll make you cry.
No,
and
it's wahaha, right? Like that.
Yeah. Well, no, it's none of it's played for humor. If there's humor, it's unintentional because of changing times. But it's every once in a while you need something that's just out and out superheroics.
Yeah.
And you have writers who are, at least with the three that are on the main title through the run, that are very well versed in that. So
yeah.
Okay. All right. So you guys both had big two. I'm bucking the trend, and I'm going with something independent. How do you like that? I read something really dark, all right? Really, really dark, okay? And it wasn't a comic, and I was putting it back. And in the section that I have over there is also where I have a stack of graphic novels that I never have read because for whatever reason. And one thing that I do miss about Book Fair was when they had the graphic novel component, because you walked away with free stuff for days. I know, Steve, you got some of my galleys from the DC stuff, right? Like months before they were published. So it was good. It was good stuff. I'm gonna miss Book Fair, and getting press passes for that. But one of the books that I never read, and it just called out to me, is a book that is written and drawn by Sam Davies. And Sam Davies has a long running, help me out here. I tried to do some notes here before. A long running web series that is known as Shutterhug, that is still going. This, however, is a 2018 book that was published by Kaboom, which is, it's still active, Boom's all ages imprint. And it's called Hex Vet, Witches in Training. It is clearly an all ages book, but you're not going to be bored as an adult reading this, because there's so much charm to this. And what happens in Hex Vet, Witches in Training, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you. Okay, so Hex Vet operates under the assumption that, as there would be regular veterinary operations for animals, it would have to be the same situation for things like griffins and phoenixes. I don't know what the plural of a phoenix is. And familiars of supernatural beings.
Phoenixy.
Yeah, Phoenixy. So over here in the town of Willow's Whisper, there's a veterinary practice, and you have in the veterinary practice, it's run by Dr. Cornelia Talon. These names are so worthy of Harry Potter. And the nurse there is a male nurse, is Ariel Chansworth. So they have this practice, and they brought on some help in the forms of Clarion Wellspring and Annette Artifice, who goes by Nan. The problem is with the Annette's family; they are practitioners of dark magic. So she doesn't have a great reputation in the town, but she still gets hired as a veterinary assistant, and they're put to work in the clinic. It's very busy on this particular day that's covered in the story. So Annette is given the task of being the receptionist. Now she's really antisocial, so this probably wasn't a good idea, but that's what she's stuck with. And just like there are bed bugs in the witch community, there are, and let me just see if I can find a picture here real quick. There are bugbears, which are bears that are supernatural that have 6 arms. And there's a bugbear in the basement, and if you shine light on it, it'll attract and it'll just split. Um, but this is Clarion, and she has a big heart. That's why she's part of a veterinary practice. So what happens is there's a rabbit that is poisoned with magic, comes into the clinic and causes all kinds of problems. They get the rabbit into one of the cages, and at the same time the doctor and the nurse have to go out on a call because a manticore is having babies. I love that excuse. So while they're gone, the rabbit causes all kinds of havoc, and between Nan and Clarion and their budding friendship and the bugbear, they are able to rectify things. This was just a charming thing from the word go. I mean, oh my God, just look at this art. I mean, it just puts a smile on your face. You don't even have to read any of those captions there. It's just going to put a smile on your face. This came out in 2018. There was a follow up in 2019, a second volume, which is called Hex Vet, The Flying Surgery. You can be pretty sure I'm going to be ordering that real soon. Absolutely love this. Absolutely love this. Really unexpected pleasure. And, sometimes go through those piles of stuff you never read because, there's some gems, and this was definitely one of them.
I mean, that's one of the joys of going to conventions is the the $3 to $5 booth, or
Free.
Or free. Just getting them free or getting them super cheap. You'll sometimes come home with like stacks, but then also when do you have time to read all of them? And sometimes on those weird random, you get that wild hair. You're like, I don't want to read this giant stack of comics that's new. I'm going to go pick up something from my, 4 years ago, picked up at Baltimore or at a local con or, whatever. It sounds like you found, a pretty big...
really nice. I haven't checked
find.
out the Shutter Hug. From what I understand, it's mostly dialogue free. Daily web comic at points. I'm not sure if it's daily at this point. At some point it was. But just, look at the cute dragon on the front there. I mean, it was just a joy, and I'm really looking forward to a second volume. And I hope there's plans for this beyond that. Because
you got me missing cons. I haven't been to one since 2020. You got me missing them in a bad way.
Okay, I know we're all going to talk about a second book. I think we're just going to have to abbreviate it a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's start with you, Steve, and let's just do very quick.
I'll just do a quick recommendation here. Yeah. It is Black History Month, and so I decided to read the biography here of Zora Neale Hurston, called Fire, with 2 exclamation points. That is important because that's referring to a magazine that she contributed to, a literary magazine she contributed to back in her prime. That unfortunately all copies were lost in a fire. So unfortunately they weren't able to go back and get reprinted. I'm sure that there are copies out there that and stories have been reprinted and all that, but the magazine itself that refers to is not there. But it is being done by Peter Baggy. This is actually the second book that he's done in this style for Drawn and Quarterly. The last one was the Margaret Sanger story. This volume itself came out, I believe, in 2017. And it's excellent. It does not pull any punches. It's not a, look how wonderful Zora Neale Hurston is. Everything she did was untouchable, and she certainly wasn't a hypocrite and certainly didn't have any, foibles that would be problematic to anybody today. It talks about some of her more controversial moments and sayings, but also really presents, the kind of challenges that she had to deal with, not just from, just from being a headstrong, black woman in a segregated America, but then also even among her peers and other black intellectuals of the time period from the 20s through the 60s, where she was most active, and then of course her unfortunate death towards the end. Obviously, in the 60s, and it ends with Alice Walker finding what she believes to be the unmarked grave that Zora Neale Hurston was buried in, and her buying a new headstone for it, which it's just a great way to end the story. It's really good. He puts a lot of notes in the back, so he actually every single page has the historical context for it. His style is, of course, the Peter Baggy style, exaggerated facial expressions and lots of colorful characters and all sorts of stuff. So much fun. It's a great book. And it was so great that our new puppy Minerva did also enjoy a taste of literature. Yeah, unfortunate. So, yeah. But
she drew and quarter that.
She drew and quarter this book. Yeah, she's dangerous. But this is a great read. I didn't know too much about Zora Neale Hurston other than their eyes were watching God, and the bluest eye, not the bluest eye. The eyes were watching God, and trying to remember the other book of hers that I read. God, it's been forever. But anyway,
the other one.
It's all in here. It's wonderful. And really interesting portrait of this very complex and important literary and intellectual character of American history in the 20th century. So, fire!
So, I haven't read that one yet. I have read the Margaret. I own the Margaret Sanger one. She also did another. Peter Baggy also did another book that was about Laura Ingalls Wilder that he wrote with her daughter.
Yeah,
and so
I'd love to read that.
Really good, really good.
He also started a book about Amy McPherson, the evangelist, that he abandoned pretty quickly. I would love to.
I got a chance to sit down and spend an hour with him in Portland a few years ago at a book festival, a literary festival called AWP. And him and Craig Thompson, I literally got to sit at the table with Peter Baggy and Craig Thompson, and I didn't have a recorder and I was mad about it. But just phenomenal. I've got this dream. If I ever get a chance to, I want to moderate a panel between Peter Baggy and Howard Chaykin that is the spiritual successor of the panel between R. Crumb and Gil Kane. That is, if I ever get a chance to, that is my personal dream. Peter Baggy does not loathe Howard Chaykin the way that R. Crumb loathed Gil Kane, but I just want to. That's my dream.
No, that's awesome.
So my second book is a much more. I'm sticking with the big two tonight. So I spoke about some Marvel from Marvel of old. I'm going to talk about some DC of new, and that is none other than Superman and Robin. It's a new one shot that came out that features. I think I've said on the show before, I absolutely love the Super Sons. I love that book. I love those characters. I love what they're doing with those characters now. It's grown on me. It took it a second because it's like watching your kids grow up. You don't want to do it, but we get the man himself returning to these characters. This is written by Peter J. Tomasi, drawn by Victor Bogdanovich, Daniel Henrique. It's got a bunch of people who work on the inks. Daniel Henriquez, Scott Hanna, Victor Bogdanovich also do some of the inks. Matt Santorelli, Ivan Placencia, and Matt Herms do the colors, and Tom Napolitano does the letters. In a nutshell, the boys are back together. Superman is having a night to where it's low key. There's not a lot of stuff going on. His mom Lois has gone off to interview some people for her next story, and he's just gonna go do some superheroing around Metropolis, and rescue some cats from trees. But Robin shows up out of nowhere and kind of startles him a little bit, which is how sneaky Robin is. And said, "Hey, we got some stuff to do. I don't know if you know this, but your pop's igloo has been somebody broke in because the alarm is going off." And Superboy's like what? No, dude. If the Fortress of Solitude had been infiltrated, I would know because I've got a crystal upstairs. And oh, look, this thing is glowing red and it's terrible, and we should probably go because it's been broken into. How do you know about this? And of course, Robin is Damien's just like, man, I've got my ways. Don't worry about it. So they hightail it up to the fortress, or up to or down to the Fortress of Solitude, depending on where Metropolis is at. We don't know. And they're trying to see what's going on, and something terrible has happened. It has in fact been broken into, and there is a cube that is kind of the cause of all this, and it's a cube we've seen before. Most recently in the Adventures of the Super Sun series, as they're kind of hopscotching through time and space because of Pandora. We see this, but it's a thing that brings people from the past, from this island that they had visited in the past, or I should say that John Kent and his dad, Clark Kent, had visited. And it's an island that's lost in time. There's dinosaurs and there's Nazis on the island that are stuck in time, and that like they're sequestered there. But this cube allows them to come forward, and it's brought forth this weird bat Cthulhu monster thing. Now I should say the island and all of its inhabitants are stuck in time, but when they enter the real world, they age. So the boys have to jump in and try to stop this creature, who ends up just being a scared animal who's not used to what's happening and is aging and has a baby, and there's a whole thing. But also because there's a portal open, Nazis do in fact come through, and John and Damien have to beat the shit out of Nazis, which is both wholesome and should be once a month at DC. I want to see John Kent and Damian Wayne just beat the shit out of Nazis at least once a month. Give me that book. Give me the John and Damien beat the shit out of Nazis #3. I just want to see it all the time. It's made even more cool by the fact that the boys get to use some of their dad's mechs that we've seen before. It's great. Victor Bogdanovich he's reliable. I don't know that I've ever looked at a Bogdanovich book and said, "Oh, I just don't like this art." He is a good storyteller. His sequentials make fun of. They make a fun time of reading the book. When it comes to some of these, I'll just show you this right here. When it comes to some of the pages like this, you can tell he really fell in love with what he was doing. He puts a little extra, a little extra ennui into his art. As far as the detail goes, it's fun. It's a one shot. At the end of it, it just really goes to show you that these two boys are like brothers. They have a friendship that I think goes far and beyond the friendship that their fathers have, which is saying a lot. And shows the bond. It was interesting reading this just real quick, because I think you can see in this book that Peter Tomasi is a little upset about the aging of John Kent, because he makes several references to the fact that, oh, this is bullshit and you didn't get to experience a lot of what you should have growing up, and you missed out on a lot of stories. So I think he's a little upset. I think our man is not necessarily on board with this, but he does play with that older character really well. So
yeah, I'm not going to agree with you on your statement about the friendship between the dads and the friendship. I think they're just different. You have a very different dynamic when you become friends with somebody in adolescence, and when you become friends with somebody in adulthood. The friendships in adulthood could be just as strong as ones that you've had since you were 7-8 years old. It's just different. There are things that you've experienced that you bring into the friendship, whereas people that became friendships at a younger age may have shared in that development.
Right. That's fair.
I just think that's a little different, because I do think Clark and Bruce would die for each other.
Well, they would, but
Absolutely.
I think Bruce would
and
also
they have multiple times.
Yeah, and they have, yeah.
I think that there is a level of trust between the kids that doesn't exist between the fathers, and there is an empathy there that I'm not going to say doesn't exist between the father, but I think it's that they just have a closer bond. They grew up together, whereas it's not like I don't like. There's something special about these two kids and their relationship that I think is magnified by their father's relationship, certainly.
Caleb, I'm not sure if this is something you even care about. In the before times, I would have been very happy. Now I'm just ambivalent about it. Aaron Rodgers won his 4th NFL MVP.
I was going to say that at the end of the show. I just saw that. Okay. Okay. I can't. That's. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Earned on the field. earned on
Yeah.
the field.
Okay.
So,
All right. We move over to my last book, and get this: no DC or Marvel from me. Not
Which is
tonight,
fantastic.
because the last book I want to talk about is Kaiju number 8, which is a manga that's published by Viz Media and Shonen Jump. It is written and drawn by this first name Matsumoto. I think it's Naya. Someone else can figure it out. So it's the first volume of Kaiju number 8, and it deals with a kaiju. Boy, that really cut to the chase. Just to give you some background, it's a very yes, but there's a twist. It's set in a version of Japan where kaiju are an ongoing problem, and there's a defense force called the Japan Defense Force that takes care of the kaijus when they invade major cities and seaports and various places like that. The main character is Kafka Hibino, and Kafka Hibino trained for a long time, wished to become part of this defense force, but he bottomed out when he joined after he didn't do well on a test for entrance. Not the case with his friend Mina, who both of them have a shared history of kaijus devastating their families and their homes. And they made a pledge that they were going to join this force. And Mina's kicking ass. At 27, she is the highest profile commander for killing these kaijus. She's living the best life. And what is he doing? He's on cleanup detail. He's the part of the team that cleans up and dismantles and does all sorts of terrible things with the intestines of these kaijus, as effectively garbage removal. You don't think about these people, but hey, they exist. So he's involved in that. And what happens is during one of his cleanups, it turns out that there was a smaller kaiju that they call Yobu that was not detected. And he and this guy's effectively his assistant, his associate, who's a much younger fella, take care of the matter. But in the melee, a la Cloverfield, where the most terrifying things about the Cloverfield monsters were the spores and the bacteria that were traveling along with them, he ingests one of them, and he becomes a kaiju himself. And the kaiju number 8 is relation to the power levels. So 8 is fairly powerful, not on a Godzilla scale, which would probably be about a 20, but he's pretty damn powerful. So it turns out he still has his mental capacities, even in his kaiju form. And what he does is he saves a couple of children. So he decides, hey, I can do something. And he's eventually able to revert to his human form, but he's always worried that the kaiju is going to come out. So eventually, because of birth rates, the end age for somebody to be admitted to the defense force was initially 30. Now it's 35. He's 33 years old. He's able to reapply, and he gets into the training program. And that's where we see the majority of the action. There's some really interesting supporting characters that get involved when he becomes part of the training program. I'm not going to get into that because we're against the clock, but the last time I read a manga on an ongoing basis for a little bit was Attack on Titan. I eventually split the scene with Attack on Titan because I felt like it was going around in circles, and with the ancillary books at Attack on Titan, I thought they were just like gross for the sake of being gross. I lost interest fairly quickly. This one I think I'm going to stick with. It's the first volume. Again, as I mentioned, it's part of the Shonen Jump family. The second volume is going to be out in April. The third volume's out in July. And yes, I sound like somebody who pre-ordered something. So this one's going to be a reader for me. And it hasn't happened for manga for me in a long time. So Kaiju number 8 by Naoya Matsumoto. And this has gotten a lot of good press. A lot of people have been talking about this book too. So there you go. Manga on the Comic Book Bears for the first time, I think, in like 2 years.
I think since the last time that Brian talked about some.
I think
something
Brian
he was
very
reading.
early on in the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, there you go. This is an episode of the Comic Book Bears that we finished, and we're now going to wrap it up. And when we wrap up an episode of the Comic Book Bears, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment in the bear community. If you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. And we do something similar. We woof at a project, which may be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
My woof of the week is all the TV that's back, because I'm a TV nerd. So we've got some shows that are ending or have ended this week. Book of Boba Fett. Final episode was on the 9th of February. Peacemakers final episode is next week on the 17th.
I'm not
some
ready
of my
say goodbye.
favorites. I'm not ready
I'm
for
not ready
that
to say
at
goodbye
all.
to Peacemaker yet.
That show has been so fantastic.
Yeah.
We've got Resident Alien that just came back a couple weeks ago, which again based on a Dark Horse series. And then they're my own little personal loves have just come back. One being the Great British Menu, which it's an amazing show. You could probably find it on Amazon if you want to look up some previous seasons. It's a lot of fun to watch. But then also Star Trek Discovery, the mid-season just came back. So really happy to see the direction that they're going into in this season. So it's TV golden age, of course, and I'm gonna wither into a little potato pretty soon. But there's so much to watch. It's great.
Caleb, before you joined the show, week after week, we would hear Steve about, the Great Australian Pastry Death Challenge, and every possible, reality show baking. It was I'm glad.
Oh yeah, Great Australian Bake Off is back. Yeah. They're back too. So.
You did get me hooked on the Irish one.
Yeah,
with
Irish
the basketball player
cool.
who hosted, and what was her name? Panty or something? Or Pasty or something. One of the.
I can't remember.
Yeah, we were talking about.
It's been a while.
I didn't know there was an Irish one. Roger loves all of those shows, and actually, I buy him
There's an Irish one, South African.
Okay.
The Kiwi Bake Off, the Australian Bake Off just started back. Yeah. These are all the English language ones. Right. There's tons of the non-English language ones that are out there too.
I've purchased Roger a library of baking books based off these, and we don't eat sweets. So we're both trying not to, and so it's but they're there. We have them.
Yeah.
You can look at the pictures; they're pretty.
All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
All right, I have one. I'll start with I have a 1.5. So Bill, I don't know about you, but one of the most flattering things anybody can ever say to me as a podcaster is, "Hey, I heard you talk about something, and I bought it. Just want you to know, because of what you just spoke about, Kaiju number 8 is now on its way to my house. Can't wait to read that." So
I thought from the Slack you may have jumped on that, because that was all over the Slack.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
I just didn't. So I know a lot of people were talking about it, but it just didn't. It wasn't necessarily my cuppa, but you signing off on it, that your opinion means a lot to me. So I picked it up. But my wolf of the week actually goes out to a Kickstarter that just launched, I think, yesterday, by some really good friends of mine and Bill's. And so our buddy John Westhoff.
And Steve.
And Steve,
Steve too. He's not alone in the wilderness. He's not alone in the Westhoff Wilderness.
The Westhoff Wilderness. Is John still on? John, are you watching the Westhoff Wilderness?
That needs to be his next title. The Westhoff Wilderness.
Yes, absolutely.
So John Westhoff, indie comics guy, has put out some great stuff. Has put out some stuff with you in it. Doing all kinds of cool stuff. He's got a new book out now that they're trying to kickstart. It's called Drumsticks of Dune. It is live now on Kickstarter. You should go back it. Westhoff and Doherty are doing it along with some friends. So essentially, in this world, Black Sabbath, not the Beatles, became the world's most famous band, and the universe was changed in lots of ways. There is a young girl named Lena, and she loves music, and she's been in bands all through her life, and she's in college now, and she still plays in her ex's fledgling metal band, secretly, so she can play her own music after her ex leaves band practice. So this is essentially the story of her, and it looks really cool. Talking to John about it, he's like, hey, if you liked Murder Falcon, check this book out. It's got a lot of the same vibes to it. I'm always down for indie comics. I'm always going to support a friend. I love Westhoff as a person. He does some really great work. He's a genuinely good person, and he's produced some great comics. I've got all kinds of stuff up in short boxes up in my comics room. So get on the Kickstarter of it all. Throw a few dollars to Drumsticks of Dune. They have some really cool tiers. There's some really cool stuff that you can back it. If you're a local comic shop for like $25, I think you can get 5 issues. Or maybe it was a 16, I forget. But I mean, like they cater to people to put their books in stores. So cannot wait to read this. It's next in line of a bunch of stuff that I've liked. So thank you, John. And you're almost there now that I'm looking at the Kickstarter. You're very close to having this whole thing in the bag, and I wish you nothing but the best. So make that finish line, buddy.
Okay. I was not able to attend last night's kickoff.
I wasn't either.
Yeah. Okay. I was just checking with you guys. I was in the middle of my breakdown, so probably not the best time to join him. But I do have to go over there and help get him across the finish line. I've been neglectful on that. John, don't worry. I will contribute. You mentioned the Beatles, and the Beatles tie into my Wolf of the Week. We were at a point here between February 7th and February 21st that the Beatles first invaded America in 1964. So we're talking at this point 58 years ago. 58 years ago. And what I've decided to do was I've decided during this 2-week time period to enjoy what happened specifically on those days 58 years ago. So I watched this Sullivan show. The first broadcast was on the 9th. I watched that on the 9th, so that gives you a flavor of that. And how did I do that? Because I have the 4 complete historic Ed Sullivan shows featuring the Beatles on DVD, and I also have the Beatles' The First U.S. Visit on DVD. The Beatles' First U.S. Visit began life as a TV documentary called The Beatles in New York, or The Beatles What's Happening, depending upon where it aired. And I'm going to talk gay here right now, just to translate for some of the gays. It was directed by the Maisel brothers, who oversaw Grey Gardens. So this happened, 12 years before Grey Gardens. So just from a gays, Grey Gardens. Unlike a lot of Beatles material, these two are still in print somehow. They're not on Blu-ray, but they are on DVD, and they have different covers now, the current versions that are out there. So you can purchase them at a very small price. There's also video footage of the Washington, D.C. concert they did on the 12th of February, 1964. I have that on the Beatles Unauthorized, but there's various streaming services that has the majority of the tracks from that Washington concert. Caleb, you'd be interested in this because you know about public domain status.
Mm-hmm.
This is in never registered status. So it's not public domain, but nobody has ever been able to make a claim against it. So It's basically treated the same as public domain. Gets a little confusing because of the music rights, but it is available on various streaming sites for the majority of the concert. Also interesting, you can also go to the Ron Howard directed 8 Days a Week, The Beatles, The Touring Years documentary, which is on Hulu and also on home video. And they have colorized versions of the Washington D.C. concert segments, and it's amazing what they can do with colorization now. It's not Turner in the 90s. It's something very, very different. And Ed Sullivan material is also part of the Beatles' First U.S. Visit and the Touring Years documentary that I mentioned on Hulu. So there's a lot of material that you can go to. That's either streaming. You don't necessarily have to get the home videos, but home videos are cool. So that's my Wolf of the Week: the Beatles invasion of 1964 of New York City, and
Awesome.
Later Washington D.C. and Miami Beach. And if you want to if you follow me on Facebook, every day I'm going to be posting links to stuff so that you can cut to the chase and enjoy some stuff as I'm enjoying it.
Awesome.
And we do.
Yep. So that's my Woe of the Week. And that wraps up the show. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can do so by downloading us through Apple Podcasts, listening to us through Stitcher Radio, and many of the other podcasting platforms. If you want to write to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. We thank everybody that's joined us on the live stream tonight. Again, these are archived on our YouTube channel. Please go over there and give a positive review and a like and follow. So until next time, which will be in 2 weeks, again, folks, we're going to try to do this, stick to a bi-weekly schedule going forward. We're going to do our best to do that. I think we can.
Oh, yeah.
I think we can.
Mhm.
So until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb A.M.
And you're going to hear a woof and an explosion if you're listening to the audio version. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof.